She was a virgin and had never felt the touch of a man in her entire life. But she pretended to be the wife of an arrogant millionaire for just 10 minutes. When he discovered her purity and kindness hidden behind fear, something changed within him. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Stay tuned. The acrid smell of cheap medicine permeated every corner of the small room, mixing with the aroma of incense that Sarah lit every morning before prayer. At 23, her life was a routine of caregiving, sewing, and silent prayers that echoed through the peeling walls of the simple house in the Ridgewood neighborhood of Queens, New York. Her mother, Elizabeth, had been bedridden for months, her fragile body consumed by an illness that doctors at the community clinic treated with generic medications and scarce hope. Sarah adjusted the pillow behind her mother's head, observing how the gray hair spread across the faded pillowcase. "My daughter, you need to live," Elizabeth murmured weakly, holding her daughter's calloused hand. "You can't waste your youth taking care of an old woman like me." The words came out broken by the dry cough that had plagued her for weeks. "Don't say that, Mum. God will heal you," Sarah replied, forcing a smile while arranging the medication bottles on the dresser. Her faith was solid as a rock, built upon years of rigid doctrine at the Ridgewood Assembly of God Church, where Pastor Jerome preached that the body was a sacred temple and any touch before marriage was a mortal sin. Sarah had never questioned these words. They were her moral compass, her protection against a world that seemed too dangerous for a young woman of humble origins. That Tuesday morning, she wore her only formal dress, navy blue, long sleeves, a neckline that barely revealed the curve of her neck. She needed to deliver printed wedding invitations to a client at the print shop downtown. Her work as an invitation artisan paid little, but it was honest, and she could do it at home without staying away from her mother for too long. The subway was packed, bodies pressed against one another in a forced intimacy that made her blush. Sarah kept her eyes fixed on the floor, holding her bag against her chest like a shield. When she finally reached downtown, she walked through the busy streets, feeling small beneath the mirrored skyscrapers that reflected her insecurities. The hotel where the print shop was located was imposing, with white marble walls and crystal chandeliers that sparkled like stars. Sarah had never set foot in such a luxurious place. Her simple shoes made noise on the gleaming floor, and she felt like an intruder in this universe of elegance and power. It was when she was leaving the elevator that a woman approached her with desperate urgency. She was tall, thin, with blonde, hair pulled back in an impeccable bun and red lipstick that contrasted with the paleness of her face. Her hands trembled while holding a cell phone that wouldn't stop ringing. "Please, I need you right now," said the woman, blue eyes shining with anxiety. "My boss needs someone to pretend to be his wife for a few minutes. It's an important meeting. He can't lose this contract. I'll pay $1,000 up front." The words cut Sarah like a sharp razor. $1,000 meant 2 weeks of medicine for her mother, maybe even the expensive medications that the private doctor had recommended. Her rational mind screamed to refuse, but desperation spoke louder. I don't know if I can do this," she murmured, her voice trembling. "It's just pretending. Stand next to him, smile, you don't need to say anything. 10 minutes at most," insisted the woman, taking $50 bills from her purse. "My name is Claire. I've been his executive assistant for 5 years. He's a serious man. He won't hurt you." Sarah looked at the money and felt her heart race. She thought of her mother, the hospital bill that would arrive at the end of the month, the sleepless nights listening to the cough that wouldn't improve. She closed her eyes and murmured a quick prayer. "God, forgive me," she whispered, before nodding her head. Claire led her through the hotel corridors to a private salon on the top floor. The double doors opened to reveal a sumptuous environment, walls covered in fine wood, a mahogany table that reflected the light from the chandeliers, and large windows offering a panoramic view of the city. 3 men in dark suits conversed in Arabic, their deep voices echoing through the room. And then she saw him. Daniel Harrison was standing with his back to her, contemplating the city through the window. He was 40 years old, with broad shoulders that perfectly filled his graphite grey suit, dark hair with silver threads at the temples, and a posture that radiated natural authority. When he turned to face her, Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. His eyes were contained storm, grey like lead, intense like lightning. The thick beard outlined a strong jaw, and there was something predatory in his gaze, as if he evaluated each person as a piece in a complex board game. When his arms wrapped around her slim waist, pulling her close, heat rose so quickly that Sarah felt her legs weaken. Daniel's cologne was burnt amber and new, leather so intense it almost made her dizzy. Sarah had never been so close to a man, and the heat radiating from his body made her tremble inside. His large, calloused hand rested on the curve of her waist, his thumb lightly brushing the side of her rib in a gesture so small and so intimate that she felt her entire body vibrate. "Gentlemen," Daniel said firmly, facing the 3 Arab investors who watched him attentively, "I present to you my wife, Sarah." The words came out naturally, as if they had been true for years. He kept her pressed to his side, possessiveness in every calculated gesture. The men bowed respectfully, and one of them, older with a graying beard and astute eyes, smiled approvingly. "Mr. Harrison, it's a pleasure to meet your wife. We know how important family is in business." His voice carried a heavy accent, but his English was impeccable. Sarah forced a smile, trying to control the trembling that ran through her body. Daniel's hand slowly moved up and down her back, a movement that seemed affectionate to the investor's eyes, but left her completely disconcerted. She had never felt anything like it, that warmth rising from her belly, the tingling sensation that ran through her skin, the strange desire to move even closer to him. "My wife is very shy," explained Daniel, and Sarah felt the warm breath of his respiration brush her ear. "But she's the most special woman in the world." There was something in his voice that sounded almost genuine, a softness that contrasted with the hardness in his eyes when he spoke to other men. The meeting continued with discussions about investments, numbers Sarah didn't understand, contracts that moved millions. She remained there silent, feeling the weight of his arm around her waist, the masculine scent that enveloped her like a dense fog. Her eyes wandered around the room, absorbing every detail of the luxury that surrounded her, the paintings on the walls that cost more than she earned in a year, the gold watch on Daniel's wrist that shone like a small sun. When the investors finally stood up to leave, greeting them with firm handshakes and satisfied smiles, Sarah thought the nightmare was over. But Daniel didn't release her immediately. They stood there alone in the luxurious salon, silence weighing between them like a dense curtain. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice cold and sharp as ice. His grey eyes analyzed her with an intensity that made her feel naked, as if he could see through her carefully constructed defenses. Sarah moved away from him, immediately missing the heat that radiated from his body. I'm Sarah. Claire asked me to pretend to be your wife." The words came out broken, and she couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. "Sarah," he repeated as if testing the name on his tongue. "Sarah what?" "Sarah Johnson," she answered, hugging her own waist in an attempt to protect herself from the vulnerability she felt. "I need to leave. My mother is sick and I—" "How much did she pay you?" The question caught her off guard. $1,000, she whispered, ashamed. Daniel laughed, but it wasn't a cheerful laugh. It was bitter, disbelieving. $1,000 to pretend to be my wife. Do you have any idea of the risk you took?" "I don't understand," murmured Sarah, taking a step back. "I'm a dangerous man, Sarah Johnson. I have enemies, people who wouldn't hesitate to use an innocent woman like you to get to me." He approached her again, and she could see the fine lines around his eyes, marks of fatigue and concern. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she replied, her voice almost inaudible. "I've never done anything like this before. But my mother needs medicine and I— Where do you live?" "Why? Answer me." "Ridgewood, Queens." Sarah hesitated, but there was something in his voice that demanded obedience. Daniel nodded, as if the information confirmed something he already knew. "Claire," he called, and his assistant appeared immediately, as if she had been waiting outside. Find out everything about Sarah Johnson, where she works, who she lives with, what her financial situation is. I want a complete report by tomorrow." "Yes, sir," Claire replied, avoiding looking at Sarah. "That's not necessary," protested Sarah, panic rising in her throat. "I won't tell anyone about today, I promise." "I know you won't," said Daniel, and there was a certainty in his voice that frightened her. "But I need to know who you are. I need to know if I can trust you." He moved away from her, walking to the window again. From behind he looked even more imposing, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the city that stretched endlessly. "You can go," he said without turning around. "Claire will escort you to the exit." Sarah stood there for a few seconds, observing him. There was something about this man that intrigued and terrified her at the same time. She knew she should run away. Go home? Forget that those 10 minutes had ever happened. But when she finally turned to leave, she took with her the sensation of his arms around her waist, the scent that had clung to her clothes, and the disturbing certainty that her life would never be the same again. 3 days passed, and Sarah couldn't get Daniel Harrison out of her head. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt again the warmth of his arms around her waist, the masculine scent that enveloped her like a dangerous drug. She tried to focus on sewing, on prayers, on caring for her mother, but her mind insisted on returning to those minutes in the luxurious salon. "You're different, my daughter," Elizabeth observed during lunch, as Sarah helped her eat the soup. "Your eyes are distant, as if you're thinking about something you shouldn't." "It's nothing, Mom," Sarah lied, but she knew her mother was right. There was something different about her, a restlessness she couldn't explain. At night, when she knelt to pray, the words came out mechanical, empty. Her faith, which had always been unshakable, seemed to have developed cracks. On Thursday, she was sewing a baptism invitation when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Someone was coming up to the second floor, where her small apartment was located. Sarah frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the mailman always left the mail at the building's front desk. When she opened the door, she found a man in a dark suit, thin, with gold-rimmed glasses. He smiled politely, but there was something calculating in his eyes. "Miss Sarah Johnson?" "Yes," she replied, suspicious. "My name is Robert. I'm a private investigator. I work for Mr. Daniel Harrison." He took a thick envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "He asked me to deliver this personally." Sarah took the envelope with trembling hands. It was heavy, and she could feel the volume of the bills through the paper. "What is this?" $5,000, replied Robert. "Mr. Harrison said you would know why." "I can't accept this," Sarah said immediately, trying to return the envelope. "I already received what was agreed upon." "He said you would react like this," smiled Robert. "He asked me to tell you that it's not payment. It's gratitude. You helped him a lot that day." Sarah closed the door and leaned against it, holding the envelope to her chest. $5,000 was enough to buy her mother's expensive medicines, pay the overdue bills, maybe even get a consultation with a specialist. But accepting that money seemed wrong, as if she were selling herself. She spent the entire night, awake, looking at the envelope on the dresser. At dawn, she made a decision. She took paper and pen and wrote in careful handwriting, "Mr. Harrison, I cannot accept this money. God does not approve of unjust money, but I appreciate the intention. May God bless you. Sarah Johnson." She folded the letter along with the still-sealed envelope and went to one of the commercial buildings downtown, where she knew his office was located. She handed everything to the doorman, asking for it to be forwarded to Mr. Harrison. On Sunday, as always, she went to church. The Ridgewood Assembly of God was small, with simple wooden benches and walls painted white. Pastor Jerome preached about temptations, about how the devil used human needs to draw people away from God. Sarah heard the words, but her mind was elsewhere. It was when she was leaving that she saw the man leaning against the black car across the street. Even from a distance, even with dark sunglasses, she immediately recognized the proud posture, the broad shoulders, the way he occupied the space around him. Daniel Harrison was there, watching her. Their eyes met for a second, and she felt her heart race. He began to cross the street, walking toward her with determined steps. Sarah panicked. There in front of the church, with the sisters of faith around, with the pastor still at the door saying goodbye to the faithful, she couldn't allow him to approach. She turned and ran. She heard footsteps behind her, faster than hers. She turned. The corner entered a narrow alley between two residential buildings. She was almost at the end when a firm hand grabbed her arm, making her stop. "Why are you running from me?" asked Daniel, his voice hoarse and breathless. Sarah turned to face him, her back against the brick wall. He was so close that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the drops of sweat on his forehead, the rapid movement of his chest rising and falling. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Why did you return the money?" "Because I can't accept it. It's not right. Your mother is sick. You need money for medicine." The observation caught her off guard. "How do you know that?" "I had you investigated," he replied straightforwardly. "I know your mother has a heart problem, that you don't have health insurance, that you work at home making invitations because you can't leave her alone for too long." "You had no right," said Sarah, her voice trembling with anger and humiliation. "Yes, I did. You entered my life, Sarah. Even if, for just a few minutes, you became part of my world. And in my world, I need to know who the people around me are." He came closer, so close that she could smell the familiar cologne, that scent that had haunted her for days. "Why are you afraid of me?" "Because you are everything I was always taught to avoid," she replied, the words coming out in a desperate whisper. "You're rich, powerful, dangerous. You're not from my world." "And what if I said I don't want to be part of my world anymore? What if I said that since I met you, nothing else makes sense?" Her words hit him like a punch to the stomach. Daniel stepped back, running his hand through his hair, frustrated. "You don't understand, Sarah. I'm not a good man. I've done things I'm not proud of. I have blood on my hands, debts to people who don't forgive. But when I held you that day, when I felt your body trembling against mine, for the first time in my life I wanted to be different." Sarah observed him, seeing for the first time the vulnerability behind the mask of power. "Then be," she said, simply before walking past him and running away again. Daniel remained there, alone in the alley, knowing he was lost. Daniel couldn't concentrate on anything. For a week since the encounter in the alley, Sarah had occupied every thought of his. He tried to distract himself with other women. He called Jessica, a model who used to frequent his penthouse, but when she arrived with her low-cut dress and calculated smile, he dismissed her before she even took off her coat. He tried to immerse himself in work, but the numbers on the spreadsheet seemed to dance before his eyes, replaced by her face, by the brown eyes that looked at him with a mixture of fear and desire. "You look like crap," observed Marcus, his partner and best friend, during a meeting on Monday. "You haven't slept, you haven't eaten, you haven't signed any important contracts. What's going on?" "Nothing," lied Daniel, loosening his tie. The glass office on the 30th floor of the commercial building offered a privileged view of the city, but he couldn't appreciate the landscape. His mind was in a narrow alley, reliving the moment when she said, "Then be," with that soft voice that disarmed him like no weapon ever could. "It's a woman," affirmed Marcus, a fat, bald man who had known Daniel since college. "It's always a woman when you get like this. Who is it this time?" "It's not like that," replied Daniel, but he knew he was lying. It had never been like this. Never had a woman occupied his thoughts so obsessively. Never had he felt that desperate need to protect, to possess, to be worthy of someone. That night, he drove to Ridgewood without a specific destination. He just wanted to be close to her, breathe the same air, walk on the same ground. He parked the black BMW in front of the building where she lived, a 5-story building with a worn facade and a rusty iron gate. The contrast with his penthouse in Manhattan was striking. Two worlds that shouldn't meet, but that fate had conspired to unite. He stayed there for 2 hours, observing the illuminated windows, imagining which would be her apartment. At 10 o'clock, he saw her come out with a garbage bag. Even from a distance, even with the poor street lighting, he recognized her immediately. The brown hair loose on her shoulders, the delicate posture, the way she walked carefully, as if the world were too dangerous a place for hurried steps. When she saw him, she stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. They looked at each other for long seconds, separated only by the width of the street, but with a social abyss between them. Daniel got out of the car, and this time she didn't run. She remained there, holding the garbage bag, her large, frightened eyes fixed on him. "You're following me," she said when he approached. "I am," he admitted. "I can't stop thinking about you. This is wrong." "I know." Daniel stopped a few meters from her, respecting the distance she seemed to need. "But I can't control it." "Your ex-fiancée was here today," said Sarah, and the information hit him like a punch. "Natalie, what did she want?" "She found out about me. I don't know how, but she found out." Sarah bit her lower lip, a gesture he found devastatingly adorable. "She said I was an opportunist, that I was trying to scam a rich man. She said this in front of the neighbors, in front of Mrs. Wilson, who lives at the front desk." Daniel felt anger rising like lava in his veins. Natalie had always been calculating, cold, but he had never imagined she would go that far. "I'll talk to her." "No," Sarah quickly said. "That will only make things worse. It's already difficult enough." "Difficult? How?" "People are talking. At church, at the market, even Pastor Jerome called me for a conversation. He said that a Christian woman should not get involved with men of dubious reputation. The description hurt him more than it should have. Dubious reputation. That's how people saw him, and perhaps that was exactly what he was. "He's not wrong," murmured Daniel. "I know," replied Sarah, and there was a deep sadness in her voice. "That's why I need to ask you not to appear here anymore. Don't look for me, don't send money, don't try to help me. I can't get involved with you. And what if I change? What if I become the kind of man you deserve? You don't change what you are, Daniel. And you are who you are for a reason. I can't ask you to transform yourself for my sake." "But what if I want to transform myself for my own sake?" Sarah looked at him with an expression that mixed hope and skepticism. "You don't know me well. You don't know who I am, how I live, what I believe in. You're in love with a fantasy. Then let me get to know the real you." "I can't." She took a step back, toward the building. "My mother is getting worse. I need to focus on her, on my faith, on my life. I can't be distracted. By this, he repeated, and there was a wound in his voice. "With you, with what you awaken in me." The confession came out as a whisper, but it was enough to make his heart race. "You make me feel things I shouldn't feel. You make me question things I've always believed in. That scares me." Daniel moved closer, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. "You're not the only one who's scared, Sarah. I've never felt this for anyone. I've never wanted to be different to deserve a woman's love." "Love?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "Yes, love. I love you, Sarah Johnson. I've loved you since the first moment I held you in my arms. I love you so much, it's destroying me, inside." The words hung in the air between them, heavy as lead. Sarah closed her eyes as if she wanted to block the impact of the declaration. "Don't say that," she murmured. "Why not? It's the truth." "Because if you keep talking, I'll end up believing. And if I believe, I'll give myself completely. And if I give myself, I'll get lost. And I can't get lost, Daniel. I have responsibilities, a mother to care for, a faith to preserve. And what if I say I want to take care of your mother too? What if I say I want to learn about your faith?" Sarah opened her eyes, and he saw tears forming. "You don't understand. It's not just a matter of money or religion. It's about different worlds. You come from a place where people take what they want, where power solves everything. I come from a place where one is taught to wait, to trust, to accept God's will." "Then teach me," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Teach me to wait, to trust, to be the man you deserve." For a moment, Daniel thought she would yield. He saw the will in her eyes, the way her lips parted, as if she were about to say yes. But then she shook her head, drying her tears with the back of her hand. "I can't," she repeated. "I can't be responsible for your transformation, and you can't be responsible for my perdition." She turned and ran into the building, leaving him alone on the sidewalk with a broken heart and the certainty that he would lose her forever if he didn't do something drastic. 2 weeks passed without Daniel appearing, and Sarah tried to convince herself it was better this way. She returned to the routine of caring for her mother, sewing and praying, but there was a constant restlessness in her chest, as if something important was missing. At night, when the silence of the small apartment became oppressive, she found herself looking out the window, searching for a black BMW that no longer appeared. "You're sad, my daughter," Elizabeth observed on a Thursday afternoon, as Sarah adjusted the pillows behind her back. The illness had progressed in recent weeks, and the doctor at the clinic was talking about urgent hospitalization. "Your eyes have lost their sparkle." "I'm worried about you," lied Sarah, checking the medication. Bottles on the dresser. Only 3 pills of the heart medication remained, and she didn't have money to buy more. "Don't lie to your mother," said Elizabeth, with a weak but firm voice. "I may be sick, but I'm not blind. You're suffering because of a man." Sarah felt her cheeks burn. "Mom, I never..." "Never what? Never fell in love? Never felt your heart race when you thought of someone? Never wanted to be touched, kissed, loved?" Elizabeth held her daughter's hand with surprising strength. "Sarah, you're 23 years old. It's natural to feel these things." "Pastor Jerome says that..." "Pastor Jerome is a man who's been married for 20 years with 4 children. He doesn't know what it's like to live alone, to care for a sick mother, to renounce your own life out of filial love." Elizabeth coughed, and Sarah saw drops of blood on the handkerchief. "My daughter, I don't want you to waste your youth because of me. It's not a waste to take care of you. Yes, it is if you're rejecting the chance to be happy. Mum, this man is not a good man. He's part of a dangerous world, has enemies, dark businesses. I can't get involved with someone like that." "Then why are you suffering so much?" The question remained unanswered, because Sarah didn't know how to explain that, despite everything, despite the risks and differences, she had fallen in love with Daniel. Harrison in a way that scared and completed her at the same time. On Friday, Elizabeth fainted in the bathroom. Sarah found her lying on the floor, pale as paper, breathing with difficulty. She called an ambulance, but the public hospital was crowded, and the doctors talked about a waiting list for admission. Sarah begged, cried, offered what little money she had, but it didn't help. She took her mother back home knowing she was losing the battle. It was that night when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Sarah." The voice on the other end was feminine, professional. "My name is Claire, Mr. Harrison's assistant. He asked me to call." "I said I didn't want any more contact," replied Sarah, but her voice sounded weak. "He knows. But your mother needs urgent medical care. There's a vacancy at Mount Sinai Hospital, already reserved in Elizabeth Johnson's name. All costs are covered." Sarah felt the world spin. "He can't do this. I can't accept." "You can and you will accept," said Claire firmly. "Your mother will die if she doesn't receive adequate treatment. Mr. Harrison knows this. In exchange for what?" "In exchange for nothing. He just wants your mother to live." "I don't believe that. Men like him don't do anything for free." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Maybe you don't know Mr. Harrison as well." "As you think," Claire finally said. "The ambulance will arrive in an hour. Prepare your mother's things." Sarah hung up the phone and stood there, trembling, holding the device against her chest. She looked at the room where her mother slept. Restlessly, her breathing labored, her face increasingly pale. She had no choice. She couldn't let pride speak louder than filial love. The ambulance arrived punctually, staffed by competent paramedics who treated Elizabeth with care and professionalism. During the journey to the hospital, Sarah held her mother's hand, murmuring prayers and promises she didn't know if she could keep. Mount Sinai Hospital was a different universe from the clinics she frequented. Clean corridors, modern equipment, doctors who actually had time to examine and explain. Elizabeth was admitted immediately, and the cardiologist, Dr. Sanders, explained that she would need complex surgery, but there were good chances of recovery. "Who is covering the costs?" asked Sarah, signing the admission papers. "Everything is paid for," replied the secretary. including the post-operative physiotherapy sessions. Sarah spent the night at the hospital, sleeping in an uncomfortable armchair, next to her mother's bed. In the morning, Claire appeared with an envelope. "Mr. Harrison asked me to deliver this," she said, extending the paper. Sarah opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a key and a handwritten note. "Your mother needs you nearby during recovery. Use the apartment upstairs. It's not charity, it's practical necessity. Dika, he has an apartment here in the hospital. Not exactly, but he has a property 2 blocks from here, fully furnished with everything you need." Claire hesitated before continuing. "Sarah, can I give you some advice? Stop fighting this. He truly loves you. I've worked for him for 5 years, seen dozens of women pass through his life. I've never seen him like this. He's a dangerous man." "He is, but not for you. For you, he would be capable of ceasing to be dangerous." Sarah was left alone in the room, observing her mother, who slept peacefully for the first time in months. Her breathing was more regular. The machines showed stable vital signs. Daniel had saved her mother's life, and she knew this changed everything. In the afternoon, when she went out for lunch, she found him waiting in the corridor. He was different, thinner, with deep circles under his eyes, unshaven. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. "How is she?" he asked. "Better, much better, thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You saved her life." Sarah approached him, and for the first time she didn't feel afraid. "Why did you do it?" "Because I love you, and you love your mother, so I needed to love her too." The simple words hit her like lightning. Sarah looked at this powerful, feared man who had moved mountains to save a stranger, simply because she was important to the woman he loved. "Daniel," she began, but he raised his hand. "Don't say anything now. Your mother needs you. When she's better, when you no longer need to worry about this, then we'll talk." He turned to leave, but she held his arm. "Daniel." "Yes?" "I love you too." The words came out as a whisper, but it was enough to make the world stop. Daniel turned slowly, his grey eyes shining with an emotion she had never seen before. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I'm sure that I love you. I'm not sure that's enough." "It is for me," he said, and kissed her right there, in the hospital corridor, a gentle, careful kiss, full of promises and hope. The following days were the happiest of Sarah's life. Elizabeth was recovering quickly from the surgery, and the apartment that Daniel had made available was a perfect refuge, small but cozy, with a view of an inner garden and everything they needed. Daniel appeared every day, always discreet, always respectful, bringing flowers for Elizabeth and talking with her about life, about faith, about hope. "He's a good man," said Elizabeth one afternoon as Sarah arranged the medications. "I can see it in his eyes. There's goodness there, hidden beneath layers of pain." "Mom, you barely know him," protested Sarah, but without much conviction. "I know enough. I know the way he looks at you, as if you were the most precious thing in the world. I know the delicacy with which he treats a sick old woman like me. I know the patience he has with your doubts." Elizabeth held her daughter's hand. "He's waiting for you to decide, isn't he?" "He is," admitted Sarah. "He said that when you were better, we would talk." "Then talk. Stop being afraid of happiness." That night, Sarah called Daniel. "Can you come here? I need to talk to you." He arrived in 20 minutes, his hair still wet from the shower, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, a more relaxed version of the powerful man she had met. They sat on the small balcony, watching the city lights coming on in the distance. "My mother is better," Sarah began. "She is. Dr. Sanders said she can be discharged next week. So it's time for us to talk." Daniel turned to face her, and she saw tension in his eyes. "I know what you're going to say, that we're too different, that it can't work, that I want to try," she interrupted. The words hung in the air. Daniel blinked as if he wasn't sure he had heard correctly. "What did you say?" "That I want to try. I love you, Daniel. I love you in a way that scares me, that questions everything I've always believed in. But I can no longer pretend this doesn't exist." "Sarah," he approached, but she raised her hand. "Let me finish. I want to try, but with conditions. I want to know everything about you, your business, your friendships, your problems. I don't want to be protected from the truth. If we're going to be together, it has to be as partners, not as a fragile doll that you keep in a bubble. Some aspects of my life are dangerous. Then teach me to protect myself. Teach me to be part of your world, instead of trying to keep me out of it. Daniel was silent for a few minutes, processing her words. Are you sure? Because once you know everything, there's no going back. Once you're really part of my life, you'll be taking risks that come with being with you. I understand that. There's something I need to tell you first, he said, his voice heavy. About how I made my money, about the businesses I have, about the people I got involved with. Then tell me. Daniel took a deep breath. My father was a violent man. He beat my mother, me, destroyed everything he touched. When I was 15, he died in a car accident. He left enormous debts, the house mortgaged, my mother without any protection. He paused, his hands trembling slightly. I did what I needed to do to survive. I started small, high-interest loans, protection for merchants, things that weren't exactly legal, but that paid the bills. Continue, said Sarah, holding his hand. Over time, the business grew. Construction, importing, investments, some clean, others not so much. I never killed anyone, never sold drugs, never did anything that could destroy families like mine was destroyed, but I navigated the grey line between legal and illegal for years. And now? Now I have enough money to live like a king for the rest of my life, but I also have enemies, people who owe me favors, others who owe me money. I have a past that I can't completely erase. Sarah absorbed the information in silence. Do you still do illegal business? Some, not out of necessity, but out of habit, out of fear that if I completely exit, someone might see me as weak and try to destroy me. Then stop. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You choose each day what kind of man you want to be. If you want me in your life, if you want to build something real with me, then you need to choose to be the man I can love without reservations. And if I can't, what if it's too late to change? Then we'll find out together, but it has to be together, Daniel. I can't wait for you to change from a distance, and you can't try to protect me from who you are. Either we're in this together, or we're not. Daniel pulled her close, enveloping her in his arms. Do you have any idea what you're asking me? I do. I'm asking you to choose between the man you've always been and the man you can become. I'm asking you to trust me enough to let me help you be better. And if I choose wrong, if my decisions put you in danger, then we'll face it together. But I can't live in fear of what might happen anymore. I want to live what's happening now. Daniel kissed her, and this time it wasn't a careful kiss. It was urgent, desperate, full of promises and fears. When they separated, he rested his forehead against hers. I'll try, he whispered. I'll try to be the man you deserve. Don't try for me, she replied. Try for yourself. Because you deserve to be happy, deserve to have a clean life, deserve to have real love. Even if I fail, even if you fail, but you won't fail, Daniel, not if I'm by your side. It was that night that he showed her the ring, a simple, elegant diamond, which he had been carrying in his pocket for weeks. Marry me, he said, his voice choked. Not because you need to, not because it's right, but because I can't imagine my life without you. Sarah looked at the ring, then at the man who loved her with an intensity that scared and completed her. Yes, she said, yes, I'll marry you. But neither she nor he imagined that at that exact moment someone was watching them from a distance, someone who had no intention of letting Daniel Harrison be happy. The happiness lasted exactly 5 days. Sarah was tidying up the apartment when she received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was male, harsh, with a heavy accent. Sarah Johnson? Yes, who's speaking? Someone who knows your fiancé very well. I suggest you turn on the television, Channel 7, right now. The line went dead. Sarah ran to the television, her hands trembling as she searched for the remote control. When she found the indicated channel, She felt the world crumble. On the screen, Daniel appeared in an old photo, alongside men she didn't recognize. The reporter was talking about an FBI operation that had uncovered a money laundering network involving influential businessmen from New York. Daniel's name was at the center of the investigation, along with accusations of racketeering, tax evasion, and association with urban militias. Daniel Harrison, 40, is considered one of the central figures in the scheme, said the reporter. According to investigations, he would have used his construction companies to launder money from illegal activities. The FBI executed search and seizure warrants at his properties this morning. Sarah turned off the television, her heart beating erratically. She picked up her cell phone to call Daniel, but he didn't answer. She tried several times, always going to voicemail. That's when the phone rang again. "Saw the news?" asked the same harsh voice. "Who are you? What do you want?" "My name is Richard Miller. I'm a businessman, let's say. Daniel owes me a considerable amount of money, and now that he's in trouble with the law, I need to ensure I'll get paid. I have nothing to do with his business." "Yes, you do. You're the leverage I need to make him cooperate. You see, Sarah, your fiancé is a stubborn man. I've tried to talk to him several times, but he insists on ignoring me. Now that he's about to be arrested, I thought he'd be more receptive to negotiations." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining the situation. Daniel has 48 hours to deliver $2 million to me. If he can't, you'll pay for his choices." The call ended, leaving Sarah in a mixture of panic and confusion. She knew Daniel had a complicated past, but she hadn't imagined it could be so serious. More than that, she hadn't imagined that this past could put her in real danger. She spent the rest of the day trying to contact him, without success. At night, when she finally gave up, she heard footsteps on the external staircase of the building. She looked out the window and saw 2 hooded men approaching the entrance. Her blood froze. She picked up her cell phone and called the police, but before she could speak, someone knocked on the door. It wasn't a normal knock. It was violent, urgent, as if they wanted to break down the door. "Open the door, Sarah," shouted a voice she didn't recognize. "We just want to talk." Sarah ran to the bedroom, locked the door, and hid in the closet, her heart beating so hard she was sure they could hear it. The sounds in the living room indicated they had forced entry. Heavy footsteps, furniture being overturned, voices whispering instructions. "She's not here," said one of the men. "Then we wait. She has to come back at some point." Sarah stayed in the closet for hours, trembling, praying, silently trying not to make noise. When everything finally went quiet, she still waited another hour before coming out. The apartment was destroyed, furniture overturned, drawers open, objects broken on the floor. That's when she saw Daniel, standing at the door. He was different. His suit was wrinkled, he was unshaven, his eyes red with fatigue. But what scared her the most was the expression on his face, a mixture of relief and desperation she had never seen. "Sarah," he murmured, running to her. "Thank God you're all right." "Daniel, what's happening?" "I saw the news. Men were here." No. I know everything." He hugged her tightly, as if he wanted to protect her from the whole world. I'm sorry for putting you in this. Explain everything to me. Now." Daniel stepped back, running his hands through his hair. "Richard Miller. He did business with me 3 years ago. I loaned him money he didn't pay. Now he's using the investigation as an excuse to blackmail me." "How much do you owe him?" "I don't owe him anything. He owes me. But he has armed men, connections to militias. He's trying to force me to pay. Something I don't owe." "And the police investigation?" "It's real. Some of my businesses are being investigated, but I'm not guilty of everything they're accusing me of. Someone deliberately placed me at the center of this investigation." "Richard?" "Maybe. Or maybe other enemies I've made over the years. It doesn't matter who it was. What matters is that you're in danger because of me." Sarah sat on the overturned sofa, trying to process everything. "What are we going to do?" "I'm going to turn myself in." "What do you mean?" "I'll go to the police, I'll cooperate with the investigation, I'll make a deal. It's the only way to end this." "And if you go to prison?" Then I'll go to prison. But at least you'll be safe. No, said Sarah firmly. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. Sarah, you don't understand. These men don't joke around. They're capable of what? Hurting me, killing me? Then let them. But I won't watch the man I love destroy himself to protect me. You don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. I'm saying we're in this together, remember? That we'll face it together no matter what happens. Daniel looked at her with an expression that mixed love and desperation. You could die, Sarah. I could lose you forever. You already lost me. The moment you decided to give up. If you go to prison, if you give up fighting, then all this struggle won't have been worth it. Then what do you suggest? That we fight. That we find a way to prove your innocence, to end Richard Miller, to clear your name. But together. It's too dangerous. Living is dangerous. Loving is dangerous. But giving up is the only thing that really kills us. Daniel pulled her close, kissing her desperately. I love you so much it hurts, he murmured against her lips. Then fight for that love, fight for us. All right, he finally said. We'll fight. But first, you need to get out of here. I'll take you to a safe place. No, I won't hide while... You face this alone. Sarah... No, Daniel, we're together or we're not. Choose. He looked at her for long seconds, seeing the determination in her eyes. Together, he finally said. But when I tell you to run, you run. Promise? I promise, she lied, because she knew she would never abandon him, no matter the danger. Daniel's strategy was simple, but risky. He had documents that could incriminate. Richard Miller, evidence that the man had tried to blackmail other businessmen and had connections to militias. But these documents were in a safe at the central office, which was now being watched by the FBI. I need to get in there, said Daniel, as they observed the commercial building from a distance, parked in a van borrowed from Marcus. The documents are in the safe in my office. They're the only proof I have against Richard. And how are we going to get in? The building is full of police officers, observed Sarah, seeing the patrol cars parked in front of the building. I know the security guards. They've worked for me for years. I can convince them to let me in through the garage. And if it's a trap, if Richard is expecting exactly this, it's a risk I have to take. That we have to take, corrected Sarah. No, you're going to stay, here with Marcus. If something goes wrong, leave and don't look back. Daniel, don't argue. This time you do what I'm telling you. Sarah saw the determination in his eyes and knew there was no point in arguing. She watched him leave the van and walk to the garage entrance, where he greeted a security guard who seemed to know him. After a few minutes of conversation, the man nodded and opened the door. He made it, murmured Marcus, a nervous man who kept looking around. Now we just wait. But Sarah couldn't stay still. Something was wrong, a sense of danger she couldn't explain. That's when she saw the black car parked across the street, with two men inside watching the building. Marcus, she said, touching the man's arm, that car over there. Do you know it? Marcus looked in the indicated direction and his face paled. Shit, those are Richard's men. Do they know Daniel is here? Probably. They must have someone watching the building. I need to warn him. You can't, we have no way to contact him in there. Sarah observed the building, calculating the possibilities. Daniel had entered through the garage, but there were other entrances. If Richard's men were really waiting for him, they might try to intercept him on the way out. I'm going in there, she said, opening the van door. Sarah, no. Daniel would kill me if I let you go. Daniel will die if I don't go. She left the van before Marcus could stop her, running down the street toward the building. She knew it was madness, but she couldn't stay put, knowing the man she loved was walking into a trap. The main entrance was blocked by police officers, but there was a side entrance that gave access to the restaurant on the ground floor. Sarah entered pretending to be a customer, crossed the restaurant, and found a service staircase that led to the upper floors. Daniel's office was on the 15th floor. She climbed the stairs, her heart beating erratically, praying it wasn't. Too late. When she reached the office corridor, she heard voices coming from the end of the hall. Where are the documents, Daniel? I don't know what you're talking about, Richard. Sarah hid behind a column, observing the scene. Daniel was standing in front of the open safe with his hands raised. Richard Miller was a short, fat man with scars on his face and small, cruel eyes. There were two other men with him, both armed. "Don't test me," said Richard, pointing a pistol at Daniel. "I know you have evidence against me, documents, recordings, whatever it is. I want it all. Even if I had something against you, why would I hand it over? Because if you don't, your little fiancée will suffer the consequences. Leave her out of this." "Too late. My men are already going to get her." Daniel tensed his muscles, as if he were going to attack. But Richard made a signal, and one of the henchmen hit him with the butt of the gun on the back of his neck. Daniel fell to the floor, stunned. "Search the safe," ordered Richard. "Any document, any flash drive, anything that seems important." Sarah knew she needed to do something. She took out her cell phone and called the police, whispering the location and the situation. Then she looked around for something she could use as a weapon or distraction. That's when she saw the fire alarm on the wall. Without thinking twice, she broke the glass and pulled the lever. Immediately, the entire building was taken over by deafening sirens and flashing lights. The ceiling sprinklers activated, soaking everything. "What the hell is this?" shouted Richard, trying to make himself heard over the noise. "Must be some problem with the system," replied one of the henchmen. "Let's go. Take what you got and let's go." "And him?" asked the other henchman, pointing to Daniel. "Leave him. With this alarm, the police will arrive in minutes. He has bigger problems to worry about." They ran out, carrying some documents and flash drives they had found in the safe. Sarah waited to make sure they were gone before coming out of hiding and running to Daniel. Daniel, wake up," she said, shaking him gently. He opened his eyes, confused, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Saving you, apparently." "I told you to stay in the van." "And I decided to disobey. Good thing, because otherwise you'd be dead now." Daniel stood up with difficulty, leaning on her. "Did Richard take the documents?" "Some, but not all." Sarah pointed to the safe. "There's more stuff in there." "I need to get everything before the police arrive." "No, you don't. I already called the police. They're going to arrest Richard." "Sarah, you don't understand. Without the evidence, he can claim I was trying to frame him. I need the original documents." "Then grab them quickly. They won't take long to get here." Daniel ran to the safe, taking folders and flash drives that Richard had left behind. When they finished, they could hear sirens approaching the building. "Let's go," he said, taking her hand, "by the emergency staircase." They ran through the soaked corridors, descending the stairs as fast as possible. When they reached the ground floor, they saw police officers entering through the main entrance. "This way," whispered Daniel, guiding her to a side exit. They managed to reach the van where Marcus was waiting, nervous. "You two are crazy," he said, accelerating as soon as they got in. "Completely crazy." "It worked," said Sarah, holding Daniel's hand. "We have the evidence. Now we need to deliver it to the right person," said Daniel. "Someone we can trust." "Who?" "I know an FBI agent, an honest man who doesn't sell himself. If we can reach him, we have a chance." "And Richard?" "Richard made a mistake today. He threatened you in front of me. Now it's personal." Sarah saw something dangerous in Daniel's eyes, a coldness that frightened her. "Daniel, don't do anything that could get you into more trouble." "I won't. I'll let justice take care of him. But first I need to make sure you're safe." "I am safe. I'm with you." "For now, but this isn't over, Sarah. Richard won't give up easily." "Then let's end it once and for all." "Let's," he agreed, squeezing her hand. "Together." Agent Albert. Foster was a 60-year-old man, with grey hair, eyes tired from seeing too much of human nature. His office at the FBI was simple, functional, with piles of cases on the desk and family photos on the wall. When Daniel and Sarah entered, he observed them with the natural suspicion of someone who dealt with criminals every day. "Mr. Harrison," he said, without getting up from his chair, "you're being sought for questioning." "I know. That's why I'm here," replied Daniel, placing a folder on the desk. "I need to deliver some information that might be useful for the investigation." "Information about what?" about who's really behind the crimes I'm being investigated for. The agent opened the folder, examining the documents. They were contracts, receipts, transcribed recordings, photographs, everything meticulously organized, with dates, values, names. As he read, his expression changed from skepticism to genuine interest. "This is about Richard Miller," he observed. "Yes, he has been using my name to conduct illegal operations. He forged my signature on contracts, used shell companies with names similar to mine, created a corruption network that involved me without my knowledge." "And why didn't you report it before?" "Because I didn't have enough evidence, and because—" Daniel hesitated, looking at Sarah. "Because I wasn't completely innocent. Some of my businesses operated in gray areas. I didn't want to draw police attention." "And now you do." "Now he threatened the woman I love. He crossed a line he shouldn't have crossed." The agent continued examining the documents. "This is dynamite," he murmured. "If it's true Richard Miller is involved in money laundering, racketeering, extortion, threats, there's enough material to put him away for decades." "It's true. I can prove every accusation. But you're also implicated in some of these operations." "I am, and I'm willing to face the consequences, but I want a deal. Witness protection in exchange for protection for my fiancée." Sarah held Daniel's hand, feeling the tension in his muscles. She knew he was sacrificing himself for her, taking on guilt that might not be entirely his to ensure she stayed safe. "I need to analyze all of this carefully," said the agent. "Consult with the prosecutor's office, see what kind of deal we can make, but—" He looked directly at Daniel. "You need to give me everything. You can't keep any information." "I understand. And you need to be available for questioning whenever necessary." "I will cooperate fully." "Good. Then let's begin. I want you to tell me everything about Richard Miller, from the first contact you had." The next 3 hours were the longest of Sarah's life. Daniel told his story from the beginning, taking responsibility, explaining decisions, revealing secrets he had kept for years. She saw him strip away all the masks, all the protection he had built around himself. When they finished, the agent had pages and pages of notes. "This is very useful," he said. "I'll need a few days to verify the information, but if everything checks out, we can have a deal." "And in the meantime," asked Sarah, "Richard is still free. We're still a target." "I'll arrange for police protection. Daniel, you'll be under house arrest with an electronic ankle monitor. Sarah, you'll have a police escort." "No," Daniel said immediately. "I'll be under house arrest, but she needs real protection. Richard won't hesitate to use her to get to me. I can put her in a temporary witness protection program." "I won't. Separate from him," protested Sarah. "If he stays under house arrest, I stay with him." "Sarah, it's dangerous." "Agent, we're in this together. I won't abandon him now." The agent observed them for a few seconds, seeing the determination in both their eyes. "All right. House arrest for both of you in the same residence, but with permanent police escort." "Thank you," said Daniel. "Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. Richard Miller is a dangerous man with a lot of money and many contacts. It won't be easy to arrest him." "But we'll succeed," said Sarah with conviction. "We hope so," replied the agent. 2 hours. Later, they were installed in Daniel's penthouse with 2 police officers on duty at the door. Daniel wore the electronic ankle monitor, which prevented him from leaving the apartment. Sarah could leave, but always accompanied by a police officer. "Do you regret it?" asked Daniel as they prepared dinner together. "Regret what?" "Getting involved in this, agreeing to marry me, not having a normal life." "Daniel, look at me," she said, stopping cutting the vegetables. "Do you think I want a normal life? Do? You think I want an ordinary husband who works 9 to 5, who never took risks, who never fought for anything? It would be safer. It would be more boring. I love you, Daniel. I don't love you despite your problems. I love you completely, with everything you are, everything you've done, everything you're trying to become. Even if I go to prison, even if you go to prison, I'll be waiting when you get out." "It could be years." "Then it will be years. No matter how long, I'll be here." Daniel pulled her close, hugging her tightly. I don't deserve you. It's not about deserving, it's about loving, and I love you more than anything in life. I love you too, more than my own life. Then let's fight. Let's prove that Richard is the real criminal. Let's clear your name. Let's have our chance at happiness. Are you sure we can win? I'm sure we can try, and sometimes trying is enough. That night, sleeping in Daniel's arms, hearing the sounds of the city through the bulletproof windows, Sarah dreamed of a future where they could walk freely, on the streets, where they could plan a wedding without fear, where they could be happy without looking over their shoulder. She didn't know that, a few miles away, Richard Miller was planning to ensure that dream would never become reality. The next morning, Agent Foster called with news that would change everything. Daniel, we got an arrest warrant for Richard Miller. We're going to arrest him this afternoon, but he found out about the operation. He's running. Is that good or bad? It's dangerous. Desperate men do desperate things. We've reinforced your security, but stay alert. Thank you, Agent. Daniel, there's one more thing. We analyzed the documents you provided. Your cooperation will result in a significant reduction of your sentence. You probably won't go to prison. Seriously. Seriously. But first we need to arrest Richard. He's still a threat. I understand. Take care. This will be over soon. Daniel hung up the phone and hugged Sarah. Did you hear? I heard. You won't go to prison. I won't go to prison. We can have our life together. We can get married. Phoo. We can be happy. We can be happy, she repeated, kissing him. But happiness would have to wait a little longer, because Richard Miller still had one final card to play. The attack came in the early hours, when vigilance was most relaxed. Sarah woke up to the sound of shattering glass. Through the bedroom window, she saw hooded men scaling the building. Facade, using ropes and professional equipment. These weren't common criminals, they were trained mercenaries. Daniel, she whispered, shaking him, wake up, they're coming. He opened his eyes immediately, survival instinct speaking louder. How many? I don't know, several, they're climbing the walls. Where are the police officers? In response, they heard shots coming from the corridor, screams, running, more shots. The police protection had been neutralized. We have to get out of here, said Daniel, getting up. Now. How? They've surrounded the building. By the helipad, I have an emergency exit. Daniel ran to a closet, revealing a secret passage that led to an emergency staircase. I built this when I bought the apartment, he explained. I never thought I'd need to use it. They ran up the narrow stairs, hearing the invaders breaking down the apartment door. Voices shouting instructions, furniture being overturned, the systematic search for them. They're not here, someone shouted. Search the entire building. They can't have gone far. When they reached the helipad, Daniel took out his cell phone and called Marcus. I need you to come pick me up. Now. Building helipad. Daniel, it's 3 a.m. Marcus, we're being attacked. Richard, sent mercenaries. I need to get out of here. Shit, I'm coming. 20 minutes, said Daniel to Sarah. We need to hold out for 20 minutes. And if they arrive before that, then we'll fight. Daniel went to a hidden compartment on the helipad and took out a gun. Sarah had never seen a pistol up close, and the object seemed terribly real and dangerous in his hands. Do you know how to use that? I learned when I was young. Never thought I'd need to. Daniel, I don't want you to kill anyone because of me. I won't kill anyone, but I will defend myself. We will defend ourselves. The sound of footsteps on the emergency staircase alerted them. They had discovered the secret passage. Daniel pushed Sarah behind the concrete parapet that surrounded the helipad. Stay low. Don't raise your head for anything. And you? I'll buy us time. The pie. First man appeared at the staircase exit, gun in hand. Daniel fired, hitting him in the shoulder. The man fell, screaming in pain. 2 others appeared, firing machine gun bursts that shattered the concrete around them. Daniel Harrison, shouted a familiar voice. It's me you want, Richard. Leave the woman alone. Too late to negotiate, replied Richard, appearing on the stairs. You cost me a lot of money, a lot of problems. Now you'll pay. Then let's settle this between us. Man to man. It doesn't work that way. You took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from you. Richard made a signal. And more men appeared on the helipad. Daniel was surrounded, with limited ammunition and no way out. That's when they heard the sound of sirens approaching. "Police!" someone shouted from the courtyard below. "Building surrounded. Surrender." "Shit," murmured Richard. "Someone must have called the police." "It was the emergency alarm," said Daniel. "When you invaded the building, you triggered the automatic security system." "It doesn't matter. I still have time to finish you." Richard raised his gun, aiming at Daniel. That's when Sarah stood up, standing between the two men. "No," she shouted. "If you want to shoot him, you'll have to shoot me first." "Sarah, get out of the way," shouted Daniel. "I won't move. I won't let you die because of me." "How romantic," mocked Richard. "I'll kill you both then." "No, you won't," said a voice behind him. Agent Foster appeared on the stairs, gun in hand, followed by a SWAT team. "Drop the weapon, Richard. You're surrounded." "I won't surrender," shouted Richard. "I'd rather die." "Then die," said Foster, firing. Richard fell to the ground, his gun flying away. He wasn't dead, but he was seriously wounded. The other mercenaries surrendered without resistance. "It's over," said Foster, approaching Daniel and Sarah. "Richard, Miller is arrested. It's over." Daniel hugged Sarah, feeling her tremble against his chest. "It really is over," he murmured. "Finally over." 3 months later, Daniel was free of all charges. His cooperation with the police had resulted not only in Richard Miller's arrest, but in the dismantling of a criminal network that had been operating for years in New York. He had to pay heavy fines, return money obtained illegally, but he kept his freedom and most of his assets. The wedding ceremony was simple at the church where Sarah congregated. Pastor Jerome, who had changed his opinion about Daniel after seeing him face his mistakes and change his life, officiated the ceremony. Elizabeth, completely recovered, walked with her daughter to the altar. "Daniel," she said when he approached to receive the bride, "take care of my daughter. She's the most precious thing I have. I will take care of her, as if she were my own life," he promised. "I know you will," smiled Elizabeth. "I can see it in your eyes. You truly love her." "I love her more than anything in the world." When the pastor asked if they accepted each other, the answers came loaded with emotion. "Yes," said Sarah, tears streaming down her face. "I accept." "Forever?" "Yes," said Daniel, his voice choked. "I accept, no matter what happens." "Then I pronounce you husband and wife," announced the pastor. "You may kiss the bride." The kiss was gentle, careful, full of promises. When they separated, Daniel held Sarah's face between his hands. "I love you, Mrs. Harrison," he whispered. "I love you too, Mr. Harrison," she replied, smiling. "Ready for our new life?" "Ready for everything, as long as it's with you." And there, before God, family, and friends, they sealed the union that had been born from an impossible encounter, survived threats and dangers, and transformed into the truest love that either of them had ever known. Daniel had found his redemption in the love of a pure and strong woman. Sarah had found her completeness in the love of a man who had learned to be better for her. Together, they would face all the challenges that life might bring, knowing that the love that united them was stronger than any obstacle. The story that had begun with a desperate favor ended with an eternal promise to love, honor, and protect each other until death parted them. And even then, the love they had built would continue to live, an example that two people from different worlds can meet and create something beautiful, lasting, and transformative. The miracle hadn't just been Elizabeth's healing, or Daniel's freedom, or the victory over Richard. The true miracle had been love, a love that had transformed